In this video, we are going to make this small to-do app in JavaScript and HTML. It has an input field where you can type your text, 2 buttons threading elements, one threading to the beginning of the list, and the other is threading to the end. And 3 buttons for removing elements. One for removing an item from the beginning, the second one is for removing an item from the end, and the third one is for clearing the list. Also, no empty inputs or spaces are allowed. You need a text editor, a browser, and some basic understanding of JavaScript and HTML to follow along. I've linked the CSS and JavaScript files to the HTML. Let's create the HTML elements, that is, an input field, a div for displaying the results, and 5 buttons. Next, I'm going to style the elements in CSS. Let's see how it looks. Let's move on to our JavaScript file. I've created this grabID function so we don't have to write document.getElementById over and over and over again. We simply need to pass in the ID of the element as an argument to this function. Let's grab the elements we created. Create an empty array where we'll store our to-dos or messages. Now add the on-click events to the buttons and the callback functions we want to execute when the buttons are clicked. In the body of the addBack function, write messages.unshift and pass in the input value as an argument to the unshift method. The unshift method adds an element to the beginning of an array. Now display the messages array in the div. The array elements are squashed together, so let's separate them by a line break using the join method. In the body of addEnd function, write messages.push and pass in the input value as an argument to the push method. The push method adds an element to the end of an array. So far so good. Now there is a small problem. When I press either of the add buttons, I have to manually reset the input field. I want it to happen automatically, so let's do that. In the body of each add function, write inp.value and assign an empty string to it, and it'll reset the input field. Now, in the body of clear_when_back function, write messages.shift. The shift method removes an element from the beginning of an array. Then display the result. In the body of clear one-end function, write messages.pop. The pop method removes an element from the end of an array. Finally, in the clearAll function, assign the messages array to an empty array, which will reset the array, that is, clear all the elements of the array, and then display the result. It works as expected, but what if you enter a space or an empty input? It'll actually add the space or an empty input to the list, which we don't want, so let's fix that. Now create a variable called RGX, short for regex, or regular expression, and assign this value to it. Regexes are patterns used for matching character combinations in strings. In JavaScript, we write regexes between two forward slashes. This particular regex will match any white space to the beginning or to the end of the input. Then, in the body of addBack function, write an if statement. In the condition, write input.value.match and pass in the regex as an argument. Add another condition, that is, the exclamation mark and input.value, which means an empty input, and separate the two conditions by the OR operator. In the body of the if statement, alert a message saying, no spaces or empty inputs. Also reset the input value. Let's see what happens. So it still adds spaces to the list. And that is because the code outside the if statement executes regardless of the truthy value of the if statement. So we need to put that code in an else statement. Let's check the result. Follow the same steps for the other add button and we are done. So that's it. I'll leave the link to the code in the description box. Thanks for watching.